Hey everyone, my name is Allison Delaney, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about the podcast that I listened to this week. So this week I listened to the Truth for Teachers podcast, and the specific episode that I listened to was episode 204 on the differentiation in the virtual classroom. There's lots of takeaways from this podcast, which I'll dive into a little bit later, but first I just want to start with the overarching message that I took away from this podcast, and that is, as teachers, we need to be able to not necessarily prepare for everything, but prepare for the unexpected. And coronavirus is a prime example of that. And so teachers have been forced to move from a face-to-face format into an online format. And while there are a lot of struggles throughout that process, it also provides a lot of new opportunities. And so this podcast focused on a lot of the positive notes associated with distance learning. The first highlight that I took away from this podcast was keeping formatting simple. It's super important to set clear expectations for students, to set out a clear format of the content. And really one thing that this podcast talked about was making sure to stick to one method of delivering that content. Especially in the beginning, if you throw too many things at the students, they'll get confused and kind of check out before they're able to really engage in the content. And another takeaway was the teacher that was speaking in this podcast really encouraged the use of offline learning experiences too. So giving students the opportunity to work on their projects off the screen and then maybe submitting their work online instead of spending all day behind a screen. The second highlight is the utilization of breakout rooms. Many of us have probably tried that over the course of the last few months. I know that WebEx and Zoom both have platforms for breakout rooms. I'm sure other platforms do as well. And these things are great because they really develop individual trust amongst students, because they promote that peer-to-peer collaboration, which is important because students might not be getting that as much nowadays. And then the third highlight that I want to share with you today is some of the teachers were talking about the importance of varying group sizes during instruction. Much like you would in a traditional classroom setting, you should still implement this sort of thing online. And so those breakout rooms are a great way to do that, but you can also do it in other ways too. You can offer one-on-one support to those students who need it, or all your students if you're able to have time to do that. You can also still have large group discussions, but those can get a little bit off topic pretty fast. So utilizing those mute functions and also utilizing the private chat feature is really important. This is basically equivalent to a student raising their hand, except for now you're the only one seeing their answer. The student isn't voicing their answer out to the entire class and sharing their answer with everyone. Students are forced to think on their own. And this allows teachers to really differentiate because it allows them to really gauge where their students are at with the content. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between quick groupings and established groupings. One of the teachers in this podcast explained that quick groupings are great because they're randomly generated. They allow students to collaborate with all of their peers and really get perspectives from vast variety of the students in the class, whereas the established groupings are more intentionally made by the teacher. And because of that, they can serve more specific purposes based on what the teacher is wanting to accomplish. So you could maybe pair up one of your higher students with one of your lower students so that the higher student could offer more support to that lower one. Or maybe you could establish groupings based off skill level. And that way students are working with peers around their same level. And then just to finish off this video with a little bit of the podcast information, the episode that I listened to was about 27 minutes. It went by really fast because there's lots of good content in there. It was completely free, super easy to download, and I think that I might have to check out some more because there's 211 podcasts available. And then would I recommend this? Definitely, because it offers the perspective of multiple classroom teachers and really allowed me to get some ideas if I were to be a classroom teacher during this time. So if you're interested, I did include a QR code that's in the bottom right-hand corner. You can feel free to check that out if you'd like. Thanks. Bye.